Welcome back, everyone, to the Moms Like Me podcast, powered by Support Now. I'm joined today by our wonderful guest, Hannah Price, who I met through a Support Now registry. In fact, she is organizer and beneficiary of one of our registries for her child, Willow. And as I was learning more about her situation, it dawned on me that I had never spoken to a parent whose child had the diagnosis that she has. And so I thought this could be a really great opportunity, number one, for me to learn, but also to share Hannah's experience being a mom with a child with a disability and what her journey has been like, frankly, from the moment she got pregnant to today. As we often talk about on this podcast, what's really important to us is creating connection and relationships, even with people that you don't know, and finding inspiration from moms that might be further along in the journey, for those that might be experiencing something similar or maybe got the news of a certain diagnosis and aren't really sure what to do with it. So Hannah, first of all, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful to be here.
Of course. If you guys are tuning in on YouTube, which I highly suggest you do so you can see the visual, she has the greatest wallpaper and just a very chic look going on. So Hannah, you had 3 older boys before you got pregnant with Willow. I'd love for you to share, what was there ever a moment throughout your pregnancy where you thought, this feels different, or I'm not sure that this is going to be as normal or as typical as I had experienced in the past?
Yeah, so we have 3 older boys, so I had experienced pregnancy 3 times, kind of knew what to expect as far as like my first trimester nausea and how that kind of went. But in my 4th pregnancy with Willow, I was just really sick, so much so that my parents had to come stay with us to help take care of the kids because I was just like bedbound. And something just felt off. I had had some other pregnancy symptoms that I hadn't had with the boys, and I attributed it to just my age. Like I was like right on the line of a geriatric pregnancy. And so my doctor was aware of it. She wasn't concerned. And looking back now, none of that was actually related to her diagnosis, but I just had the feeling that something was different. Something didn't feel right about the pregnancy. And so when we got her diagnosis at our 20-week scan, obviously I was shocked and devastated. There was instant grief, but also I wasn't surprised, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. It was a very weird dynamic in that moment.
So what you're saying is you felt like something was off. Your symptoms were different than what you had experienced prior, but technically those things were not related. Is that what the doctor said?
Yeah. It was unrelated.
It was just a tough go at it, and then you got this thing. But I would imagine because this pregnancy felt so different, maybe it helped you understand it better at that 20-week scan. Because had you not had those symptoms, I would imagine you would have been perhaps more surprised.
Yeah, I think I had a lot of fear. And so I think that was something, like I'm, a follower of Christ. I'm a person of faith. And so I think those were things that I was already learning to hand over to him and to just release control because, as every mom knows, when you're pregnant, you have no control. You can only do what you can do. And so I was already learning to loosen my grip of what this pregnancy was going to look like. And then, at that 20-week scan, things were just, flipped upside down. But I felt prepared for that.
Yeah. So, Hannah, talk to me about the 20-week scan. For any moms listening, everyone is familiar with the anatomy scan. To me, it's like the first time where I sense moms either have that sense of relief, that first exhale, truly. But there's different milestones along the way, but the 20-week is significant. And you knew that going into it. What was different about that scan? How did they identify that something was off? And what was the actual diagnosis?
Yeah. So with our first 2 boys, we didn't find out their gender. And so with our second 2, it was a fun and exciting thing to find out the gender. And so my husband was actually able to come to that appointment with me, which looking back, I'm so thankful for because he wasn't able to come to all of the other scans. And so he happened to be there at that appointment. And during the ultrasound, the sonographer couldn't get the view she needed, if you will. Willow was in a weird position, and it was just taking a really long time for her to try to see the gender, and she did all of the other views. She asked about the size of my boy's head during that, and I was like, what? Why? Why are you asking that? And then she continued to do the scan, and then it kind of seemed like she just suddenly gave up on trying to find the gender. Like it was just like a very abrupt ending to the appointment. And I felt frustrated. I remember walking into the next room with my husband and saying, like, I feel like she didn't try very hard to actually find the gender. She was like, we'll have to do it at another appointment. And so then we waited in the room for my doctor for like what seemed like a really long time. And so I just was like, what's going on? We haven't usually waited this time. So the doctor came in and she had tears in her eyes. This is a doctor that had delivered one of my other children. She had kind of been with us on, 2 pregnancies. Something else I forgot to mention, during my earlier scans during this pregnancy, I remembered the doctor saying the phrase, like, I think it was when I turned down some of the testing, just the general testing that they do, because to me, it wouldn't have made a difference either way, if that makes sense. But I remember the doctor saying the phrase bubble butt is what she called it. And she had mentioned that a couple times. And I knew that she was referring to spina bifida, but I didn't know anything about spina bifida at that time. So then when she came in and told us that they had found spina bifida, I thought that was so strange because with my son that she delivered, I don't remember her mentioning that ever in any appointment. But then with my appointments with Willow, I remember her bringing it up multiple times. And so that was another thing that I was like, okay, this diagnosis doesn't feel that shocking because it's something that we had talked about.
And had you talked about it before because it had appeared on a previous ultrasound, like blood work? Like you said, the doctor is a female, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So what prompted her to mention that previously?
Yeah, so I think it was when they offer the testing at the beginning to check for, different genetic things or neural tube defects. And when I turned them down, it was more of a like, I don't feel like I need to do this type of situation. But then I asked, what are these looking for? And I remember her saying like it would find a neural tube defect, but also those would show up on a scan. And so I felt confident in not doing the test because if there was an issue, it was going to show up on a scan.
You'd find out at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So she comes in with tears in her eyes. She tells you, Willow, or, your baby has spina bifida. Did you know what it meant? Like, how did that conversation evolve from there?
So I had heard the term spina bifida. I knew that there was an association to folic acid. That was all I knew. I knew nothing about it. To be honest, in the moment, it felt like a fatal diagnosis. The way that she told us, the information that she gave us, there was a big divide in what we were told in that appointment and what is actually true. She is a fantastic doctor. Absolutely love her. But I feel like there is a lack of awareness and education on what spina bifida is and what that means for the life of someone with spina bifida. And so it became a very like, okay, this is this diagnosis. Now you have to sprint to get treated and to figure out what to do. So there is a prenatal surgery that they can do. So for those that don't know, spina bifida is a neural tube defect. So Willow's spine, or her spinal cord, was not fully developed. And not only that, but there is a very large hole in her back where her spinal cord nerves were coming out of her back and were enclosed in a large sac. And so she is paralyzed from the waist down. She has a little movement, we think, in like her hips and possibly her legs. So there's a prenatal surgery that they can do where they essentially put the mom under, do a C-section, birth the baby's booty and back, repair the opening, close them back up, refill with saline to fill the amniotic sac. And then as the baby, drinks and pees that out, it just makes new amniotic fluid. But that surgery has to be done by, I think it's like 27 weeks. They think they try to do 24 to 27 weeks. And I was getting my 20-week scan at actually like 21 weeks. So I was already behind. And so at that appointment, it was a Thursday. And she was like, hey, listen, I'm putting in a call to this specialist. You need to try to be seen tomorrow or Monday. And so it was just like this instant, like, we have to be seen immediately. We don't know anything about this. And she told us that we would have to go out of state for this surgery. And so that next day, I immediately started researching as much as I could. I started making phone calls. I think that first day I made like 13 phone calls to different places, just trying to get in to a specialist. Yeah, just trying to figure out what our next steps were with no understanding of what was actually happening.
It sounds so stressful. Like, was your heart in your gut? Like, I mean, it sounds so scary. You also have 3 other children to take care of. Like, Describe what you remember about those days or those hours, just trying to figure out the next best step.
Yeah, I mean, we have a great family support and like church. And so we immediately, like as soon as we got the diagnosis, we let people know. We were like, hey, this is what we were just told. We don't know what this means, but please, please be praying for us. Like, we don't know what is happening. But yeah, just I remember standing in my room, making all these phone calls, not even sure who to call, what to do. And there was one nurse that I ended up talking to. Honestly, I don't even remember where she was. Somewhere, we live in the Fort Worth area. She was somewhere in DFW. And she could tell that I was crying on the phone with her. And she was like, hey, listen. She said, I know that this is new for you and that this is really scary. She's like, but we deal with this every day. Like, it's going to be okay, basically, is what she told me. And I have her name written down somewhere. I need to look it up. But that was just like, in that moment, that was like, 2 or 3 days post-diagnosis, just really gave me a sense of like, okay, like, someone's going to help us. But it really threw us into just a groove of like, immediately realizing we have to advocate for ourselves here. We have to advocate for our baby. No one is going to make these phone calls or set up these appointments for us. And if we want progress and we want to pursue this surgery, then we have to make it happen.
Right. And it's about this woman for you, it sounds like also provided that little bit of hope that I think you were missing from the doctor. Like the doctor, it was doom and gloom. This is life altering. And not a lot of optimism of like what this could be. And like not all diagnosis affects kids the same, right? There's a scale and a spectrum across a lot of these different diagnoses that you get tested for throughout pregnancy. And it sounds like this woman also just gave you that little bit of peace of mind that we're going to do this. It's going to be stressful, but you're also going to be okay. And maybe even more importantly, you're not the only person that has faced this. And I think for medical moms, the loneliness factor at the beginning is often what I hear can be the most isolated because you feel like it has the same set of decisions to make and stressors in their lives. And this woman kind of gave you that immediate sense of, okay, it's not going to be easy, but we can do this.
Yeah, definitely.
How did you come to the decision, surgery, no surgery? Again, it sounds like, you're sprinting. You're sprinting to both collect information, understand pros and cons. I mean, the surgery itself sounds, as you describe it, it sounds out of this world, right? Like, I think most people that aren't familiar with spina bifida thinking to themselves, like, you could do that? Like, how?
Right.
Like, that's going to be so risky to the baby, to the mom. Risks all over the place. What was your process of trying to figure out what you were going to do? And then how did you ultimately come to your decision?
Yeah. So we did finally get in to see a specialist here in DFW, and they had to do further testing. So I had to have an amniocentesis and a lot of other testing done before they would even refer us to. So Houston is where surgery is. So not out of state, like my OB had told us. Yeah. So we started that process. It was like a 2-week process of seeing the MFM to get the referral to Houston. And then the thing about the surgery is that often the babies, like, they're going to be a preemie. After that, being delivered, basically, they try to keep them in as long as they can. So there was a fear of, okay, we're going to be hours from home with our kids back in DFW, and we're going to be stuck there basically until they clear us or until this baby is born. So yeah, we had to figure out childcare. There was just a lot. There was a lot going on. But somewhere in that 2-week period, I can't even remember who connected us, but there are some amazing Facebook groups, and there's a group specifically for people considering prenatal closure for spina bifida. And so, I hopped on that group, said, hey, this is my situation. This is what's going on. And the moms on there are just so supportive. And they just said, hey, like, this is our story. This is what our, 6-year-old child with spina bifida looks like now. And like, just so much hope through the stories of seeing like, okay, my baby is going to be okay. Like, things are going to be okay. There will be challenges, but we could do this. And so that was a huge, just area of hope for me, just to see the stories of other women that have been through this, other families.
Social media and Facebook or technologies like that, they get such a bad rap, and for good reason. And at times, it can play such incredible role for exactly what you're talking about. Like, these are total strangers. You don't know these people, Hannah. And suddenly they are giving you a lift and like, again, a sense of optimism that I would imagine not just fueled you in your pregnancy, but even beyond, to kind of have this North Star of like, okay, well, here are examples that ended up good. Here are examples of moms that are still enjoying motherhood and whose lives, they've managed to create meaningful lives, meaningful families, despite all of this. And so I just want to call out that it is an amazing thing that random strangers can oftentimes play such a critical role for, especially for medical moms. You're Googling things you never thought you'd Google before. You're thinking, how the heck is there going to be anyone that knows anything about this topic? And then you find this random Facebook group and suddenly you found these mom experts. It's an amazing thing. It really is.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's such that shows the value of sharing our stories. Like, we have had these experiences, and if we keep it to ourselves, that doesn't do anyone any good. But if we can share our stories with other people, we can be hope bringers to other people experiencing the same thing as us. So I think it's huge.
Yeah.
So figured out childcare for our kids. My husband and I went down to Houston, started having appointments. I had to have a 2-hour-long MRI for them to see her, because they needed to see where her lesion was, where her opening was. Also, along with spina bifida, most babies born with spina bifida also have hydrocephalus. And so they needed to check her brain, the fluid levels in her brain. And we also discovered during one of the scans with the specialist that she had bilateral clubbed feet, which is also common with spina bifida. And so this MRI was kind of let's get the full picture for the specialist in Houston to see if they can perform this surgery or not. Because if there's any heart defect or any other thing going on, then it's a no-go. So do all the testing, start meeting with the specialist, and they just have it down. It's you have a 3-day schedule that you're given, you go, you meet with all these different people. And so on the second day, we were having an ultrasound, and the sonographer brought in the specialist. And then he brought in a med student, and they were just quietly staring at the screen for a really long time, talking, and it's what's going on? So he finally was okay, you can see that we're looking at her leg right now. I was her leg? I thought we were, worried about her back and her head. And so it turns out that kind of as a result of her paralysis and her clubbed feet, as she had wiggled in the womb, she had twisted around her umbilical cord. And it was wrapped around her left leg, we think 5 times. And it was tight. And so that was an immediate cause for concern. And I mean, literally, in that meeting, he was talking about, she may lose her leg in the womb. She could come out without her leg. Then that launched us, which, by the way, my dad is an amputee. And so it was this weird moment of okay, I can handle that. That's not an amputee. That's not a huge deal to me, but what does this mean for everything else? And so anyway, in those meetings, they finally told us hey, we can't operate safely on her, because it was wrapped around her so tightly. And they even called other specialists from different states and said, hey, this is the situation. And everyone was 1, we've never seen anything like this. And 2, yeah, you can't safely do this surgery because the umbilical cord, if it gets pulled at all, that could be fatal for her or for me.
Gosh. Hannah, what was running through your mind at that moment?
Oh man, it was just okay, we just processed all of this other stuff, and now we have this new thing to process and worry about. But in that, we had prayed really hard for just a clear answer of surgery or no surgery. So I was talking about the Facebook group for the prenatal closures. There's also a group for moms and children that have had the postnatal closure, so the surgery after they're born. And so I was able to see side by side, okay, to me, I'm not really seeing a huge difference between the outcomes here. And there isn't a lot of data. This prenatal surgery is relatively new. And so there isn't a ton of data to show it's, yes, absolutely so worth it to do. So there really was just a burden on us to decide what is the right choice? What is going to benefit our daughter the most? And so we had prayed for a clear answer, and we got that. It was just a very clear no. And so it was, even though there was a new added stress of, what's going to happen with her umbilical cord, there was a relief that, okay, we now just get to spend the next 3-4 months of pregnancy just preparing instead of having surgery and recovering and then, preparing again. So.
Right. I would imagine, to your point, like that clarity was healing. Okay, we know what we need to do. We need to take it easy as much as you can with 3 boys at home, and to get ready for the potential, medical effects of having a child with club feet and spina bifida, and knowing that that likely will mean preemie. So what ended up happening from that point? How long did she effectively stay in the womb before you had to deliver, and what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, so obviously planned C-section, all
Yeah.
the reasons. I had weekly ultrasounds for the rest of my pregnancy to check the umbilical cord, to check on the blood flow in her leg, but also to check on her. They really were tracking her brain fluid, tracking the cerebrospinal fluid buildup in her brain. And so, yeah, weekly appointments, but kind of just got into a groove and was able to, enjoy the rest of my pregnancy and just be with my boys, start to, I built an Amazon baby shower registry. She's our only girl and our 4th kid. And so, we got to have a baby shower and just kind of really celebrate her life and enjoy
Man.
that. And building the registry, like going to those Facebook groups and asking, okay, what NICU items will we need? Because obviously she's going to be in the NICU, or what socks work with clubbed feet, what, jammies, or just all the things. And so it was a very unique time to just research and prepare. Yeah, and just be excited that we were having our first girl.
Yeah. And it was a C-section. At what point did you deliver?
Yeah, so I had had a few ER runs because she is paralyzed. And so that was a big difference in this pregnancy, is I wouldn't feel her moving. I wouldn't feel her kicking. And so there were times where, I was doing kick counts and there were no kick counts because she can't kick. And so we had been to the ER for checks, and I think they were kind of starting to get annoyed with me. And then we'd gone to the ER, and then like a couple weeks later went back because I was in labor. And, this is my fourth baby. I kind of knew what things felt like. I was 37 weeks, 37 and 3.
Wow.
And the doctor that seen me 2 weeks before was like, oh, hey, you were just here, weren't you? And she kind of didn't believe me. They gave me some medication to see if that would slow things down, and it didn't. And finally they were like, yeah, no, you're in labor. We're going to have you in the OR in an hour. And so that was like,
Wow.
That was a shock of like, okay, this is happening.
Was this your first C-section?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Okay. And so I feel like 37 weeks, while early, it's not, micro preemie status, and it was time. She was ready. I'm sure you were ready. What do you remember about when you ultimately saw her and held her for the first time?
Those are vivid memories. Even though I felt like I was like high as a kite from the medicine they had given me, it was crazy because of her situation. They had so many medical students in that operating room, in the delivery room. And then they had, the OBs, and then they had the NICU team was there ready to receive her. So, yeah. One thing that we had prayed was that she would come out screaming. That was just like our number one prayer. And she came out and she was screaming. And I, got to see her see her face for a second. And then they had to rush her away to the other side of the room. So her sac was full of her nerve endings and fluid. It was as large as her head. It was pretty big. So when they delivered her, it ruptured, and which was not shocking, but is obviously an huge risk of infection. And so they immediately took her over to a little incubator, and they essentially put her in a plastic bag up to her. It was like a plastic sleeping bag, if you will, and then wrapped her up in that to kind of keep it moist and just keep everything clean until they would do the surgery. They tried to do it within 24 hours. So then they swaddled her up and brought her to me, and I was like, can I touch her? And they kind of laid her on me, and the nurse was like, you can kiss her, touch her. And so I just snuggled her, as much as I could for a minute. And it was brief. It was a minute. And then they took her away and did all the things they had to do, closed me up. And then the nurses, they took me in my hospital bed and rolled me into the NICU so that I could see her. And it was tight. I don't know looking back, I'm like, I don't know how they fit that hospital bed in there, but they did everything they could to get me time with her and to see her. So yeah, it was scary, but it was also like, she's here, she's doing good. And it was a sense of relief. Like, we don't have to worry anymore. Like we can see her now. It's not this unseen worry. She's here.
What would you say your expectation of that diagnosis would be versus the reality of that diagnosis? And I'm sure there's some kind of more positive, some not so positive, but overall, like, how do you describe what you expected versus what you really have experienced with her?
I think it's kind of twofold. I feel like it has been nothing like what we expected. Her hydrocephalus has been very minor. She did have to have brain surgery at 7 months old, but she has not required a shunt, which that's just like a thing that people with spina bifida have. Like you have a shunt. That's just a normal thing. We didn't even know it wasn't that it was an option for her to not have one. And so that's been a huge relief, because shunts, they cause a lot of problems. While they save lives and they're helpful, they cause a lot of problems. And so that's been a huge difference. Her clubbed feet treatment has been complicated because when she was delivered, we found out when she was 2 days old that her femur was broken. So she has weak bones, basically from your bones get strengthened from movement, from moving them. And obviously she can't move her legs. And so she broke her femur a second time during the casting phase of foot treatment. And so we decided to just put a pause on that. She can't stand on her feet right now anyway, and she'll have surgery in a few months for that. But then as far as like just spina bifida itself goes, I feel like things have been kind of what we expected in that regard. But that is solely due to, in North Texas, we have the Spina Bifida Association of North Texas, and I got plugged in with them during those first few days. I still don't remember how I found them, how I got plugged in with them, but it has been the most amazing blessing in all of this, just to have other families. And like, there's a lot of families in our area that have kids with spina bifida, and getting plugged in with that community has helped us to see like, okay, this is the snowflake condition, as they call it, but these are some things that we might expect, or these are some things that are actually a big deal. But just getting to be in community with other families, even getting to talk to them about like, hey, how do you love on your non-disabled kids well, while caring for a disabled child? And they have a camp for kids with spina bifida here in Texas. And my husband was able to go volunteer as a counselor there this last summer to get more of like a hands-on education of spina bifida. And so, yeah, I would say like things have been what we expected for the first year. Granted, she's only 16 months old. So we're really new to this. Like this is fresh.
Yeah.
We're at the beginning of our journey, really. But I can't imagine doing it on our own, like without the Spina Bifida Association, because it's just been our lifeline, and truly.
What's one of your biggest pieces of advice for someone that's listening that is concerned about this condition, maybe just got a diagnosis, that's very overwhelmed at the moment? What would you say to that mom?
I think 2 things. It's going to be okay. There will be hard times. And like I said, there are kids with much more severe spina bifida journeys than what we're walking right now. And there are kids with spina bifida that are ambulatory, that can walk. Our daughter is not that way, but things will be okay. But really, like, I think my biggest thing I want to say is get connected. Find the community that's out there. Yeah, like I said, I can't imagine walking this journey without other families that I can, ask a question of like, hey, what did you do in this situation? Or what doctor should I, visit for this thing? Yeah, just don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to share even the weird things, even the things that might seem embarrassing. Like, just put yourself out there, because it's worth it. And that's how you build a deeper community. And I think community is just truly the most important thing for parents with, children with disabilities.
Final question, and maybe I should ask this one before I ask this last one, but, I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about your daughter and these 3 boys. Talk to me a little bit about how your relationship with your husband has evolved through this journey.
Yeah, so as with all things, like, you realize how different you are from your spouse, and like, just a reminder that, okay, we process things differently. Our brains don't work the same way. And when we first got her diagnosis, he was like, I'm going to take things as they come. I don't want to read anything about it. I just want to, wait and let the information come to me. And I had already read like everything on the internet about spina bifida.
Yeah, you were like, I've already seen that Reddit thread. I've already been on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like sending him these Facebook stories of like, oh, read this story about this child. And that was overwhelming to him. And so for him, going to the Spina Bifida camp as a counselor, that was the best way for him to really like dig in and understand like what we were about to walk through. And so I feel like just giving each other space to process and grieve also. He grieved differently than I did at the beginning. And even now, like there are moments of grief. Our daughter is, starting to be the age where she wants to go play with her brothers at the park or whatnot, and she can't. And so, we had a moment where we were just kind of crying together, like this is hard. But we've always just had, a very open relationship. I'm not, not afraid to tell each other anything really. And so I think that's just open communication has been helpful. But I think the biggest thing is giving each other space to process differently and just to learn the way that we each learn.
Yeah, like learn together, but also learn individually, and knowing that this is new for both of you. Like you didn't sign up for this. You're not taught to be a medical parent at any point in your life. So you both are learning for the first time. And like you mentioned, everyone grieves differently, everyone learns different, everyone processes differently. And so you have to find a new rhythm of how to support each other and how you may ingest some of this information, while also knowing that you're ultimately a team. And that's what it requires to do this well. Hannah, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and sharing more. I have learned a great deal about spina bifida through you. And it's a fascinating diagnosis that presents a lot of different complications. And it's not as uncommon, I think, as people might realize. I mean, it's one of these things that I remember when I was pregnant with all three of my kids, it comes up. And so learning a little bit more about what this is, to be more knowledgeable when these things come up, when supporting friends and family members that might be pregnant. I mean, this has been very enlightening for me. I'm confident and will be for our listeners. And I just also want to say that, we're praying for you. We're praying for her, and that you all will continue to find your way through this journey, knowing that it's not going to be linear, but that you have everything you need in your husband and your community, and finding like-minded moms that are trying to figure out this as the best they can with the resources they have. And so I am confident this is a source of inspiration for those listening, and that might be walking a similar path. So thank you again for joining me today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.